Staking trees is a really great strategy we can use to strengthen and straighten out a tree. But if we don't do it correctly, we can actually weaken a tree in the long run. In today's video, I'm going to be staking these two avocado trees in two different ways and explain how you can stake your trees to make them stronger. But first, what is staking? Well, staking is when we drive a straight piece of wood or other rigid material into the ground or potting medium to support the upward growth of a plant. You'll often see this with herbaceous plants like tomatoes to keep them upright so they don't fall over. And you'll also see this with cultivated trees, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Young trees can often be very flexible and flimsy, and when transplanted into a place that offers inadequate protection, might break in the wind. Also, when a tree is transplanted, it often needs extra support before its root system establishes itself. If there is no support when the wind blows, the tree may be at risk of being uprooted. Staking is a way to help support the tree until it is strong enough and established enough to withstand the elements by itself. There are different kinds of staking strategies, and we're going to be looking at two of them in this video today. The first one is single staking, which is typically used for smaller trees to help them remain upright. And the second is double staking, which is typically used for slightly older trees to help them strengthen their trunks. This allows for some flex and movement in the trunk, allowing it to, over time, strengthen itself. There are some dangers to staking, especially if we stake a tree that doesn't need to be staked. We can actually weaken it by doing so. Trees need to be able to flex in order to strengthen themselves. And if we stake a tree unnecessarily, we can actually hinder that strengthening, causing it to become weaker over time, which, as you can imagine, would cause problems. If it's a fruiting tree, the added weight of fruit might cause some problems if the trunk isn't strong enough to support it. And if we eventually take the stake away and we haven't allowed the tree to strengthen itself, we're going to cause problems because it's going to be too flimsy, flexible, it won't be able to support itself, we're going to experience some significant breakage. It is for this reason that trees need to be monitored regularly to check if a stake is still necessary. Because if a stake is left there unnecessarily, you're going to cause problems. You might need to adjust a stake or even switch strategies, or take the stake away entirely because the stake has done its job. In this video today, I'm going to be showing you how to single stake and double stake your trees for when they need them. I'm going to be staking a small tree to help it remain upright and double staking a large tree to strengthen its trunk. These staking strategies can also be used on trees that aren't avocados. And while the trees I'm staking are in containers, in pots, you can use these strategies on trees which are planted in the ground. So we're going to need a few things before we can do any staking. The first thing is, of course, the stakes. When deciding on which stake to use, think about what your tree is going to need. If it's a really big tree, it's going to need something bigger. For my taller tree today, my bigger, older tree, I'm going to be using some solid wood, some pine stakes, and for my smaller tree I'm just going to be using a bamboo skewer. It needs to be straight and it needs to be strong so that it can support the tree. If you're planting a really big tree, it needs some serious support. You might even consider star pickets, but we're not doing that today. Then you're going to need something to tie the trees to the stakes, and today I'm using this tree tie. This is fairly inexpensive at a garden store. It's a little bit stretchy. I don't want to use string for this. The reason being is that the tree needs to be able to flex a little bit and it needs to be able to grow, and string doesn't allow things to move really well, and if it does, it risks cutting into the trunk, which is something we want to avoid. So I'm using this stretchy tree tie. If you have some old tights lying around, you can also cut them into strips and use them. You just need to use something soft, something a little bit flexible. Okay, so first up I'm going to be sorting this tree out. It's got quite a lean at the moment. The purpose for staking this tree is to straighten it out. We want to correct it. And so the goal at the moment is not to strengthen it. That'll happen at another time when we remove the stake to let it strengthen, or if it's more appropriate, if the tree's a bit taller and still quite wobbly, then double staking, which is what we're going to do next. But for this one, I'm going to take my stake and I'm going to come on either side of the tree, doesn't really matter. I could have it leaning on the stake or I could have it pulling towards the stake. I don't really have a preference. Some people might, but I'm going on the other side. And then I'm going to take some ties and I'm going to tie it at a couple of different points to the stake. So I'm going to come probably one low and one a little higher. It's not a super long tree, so I don't think I need to do too many more than that. As long as it's got a couple of points on the stake, that's all we need. So I'm going to come in and tie it so that it is fairly tight. It's not got a lot of wiggle room, and just tie a basic knot there, whichever one you choose. And then we'll come and we'll do another one. I'll probably actually come above these branches here. It's not super vital where it is, so long as it's along the main trunk, which this is, and tie it there. Okay, that is looking pretty good. As we can see, it is straight, which is exactly what we want. How long am I going to leave it on the stake? Well, probably for another year. Really let it straighten up, establish its roots so that it is now growing in an upwards direction instead of in a sideways direction. And then when I'm repotting it next, I'll assess whether it needs to be double staked or I can take the stake out. Double staking is what we're going to do now. So first up for this tree is going to be removing the old stake. Now, I repotted this one that I bought last year and I never got around to removing the stake. Often trees are sold with stakes because it prevents damage during transportation. So I'm going to just carefully come along with my scissors and remove the ties here. And now that it's removed, I can just pull the stake away. And now, as you can see, it's got a lot of flex, and we want it to have some flex because flexing and moving around like that is what's going to cause the trunk to strengthen. So we don't want it to be totally rigid, we want it to have a little bit of flex, but that's probably a little bit much. If we get some really big winds, that's going to cause some damage, especially because we've got so much branch up the top here. Most of the mass of the tree is up high, and so it's going to really get some movement going. So we need to remedy that. So to do that, I'm going to use these two stakes, and I'm going to double stake this tree. So I'm going to come around to the edge of the pot. Now this works as well if you're planting it in the ground, but I don't have any ground at the moment that I can plant trees in, so I'm doing it in a pot, of course. So I'm going to just come and put the stakes in opposite each other. So put them right down as far as they will go, and they'll be about the height of the trunk of the tree. And now that we've got our two stakes in, it's time to tie the tree to it. Placing the ties is not an exact science. We just want to have a couple of contact points on each side. So I'm going to take enough tie so that it will go around the tree and come back around the post here, just like that. I'm going to tie it so that there's a little bit of tension because I want it to stay up here. Because of how rough the post is, it shouldn't have too much of a problem, but I want to have a little bit of tension here. And then whatever knot you want, I'm using a granny or a reef knot. I know they're not exactly the same thing, but I can't tell the difference. And that is all there is to it. So see how there's a little bit of tension there? That is what we want. Now I'm going to do another one up a little higher, up fairly high actually, just up here. Again, making sure it's a little bit taut, but it shouldn't be enough to really bend the tree over. If I was to leave it here, it's got quite a bit of support now, but it's still going to be able to rock around, especially if we get wind going this way. It's going to bump around, and we don't really want that. So I'm going to use this other pole now and attach some ties to that as well. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to come kind of halfway between these two so that it's got something pulling it the other way as well. That's just going to give it that little bit of extra support, which is what we need. So again, making sure that it's taut but not pulling on it too tightly, and I will tie it there. And I might do one more around here just for good measure, though at this point I think that the 3 that I've got on there will be enough. And as you can see, it's still got a bit of flex, but it can't really go any further than that. It can also go a little bit this way as well. It can move, which is going to strengthen the tree. So as the wind blows and so on, it's going to cause this tree to strengthen its trunk, which is exactly what we want. And there we have it. I have staked 2 trees in 2 different ways. So I've got a single stake here with the purpose of straightening out the tree, making it grow upright. And I've got a double stake here, which has the purpose of strengthening the tree, allowing it to move around, but not too much so that it snaps. Movement is, of course, really important for a tree to be able to strengthen itself, but if it's going to flex too much and snap, well, that's quite counterproductive. Good luck with your trees. Remember, there's no exact science to this. Just remember that stakes are for supporting a tree as it straightens out or as it strengthens itself, but we don't want to leave it on forever because that's going to cause your tree to not be able to support itself, which is of course not what we want. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you have enjoyed it and you found it useful and you're ready to take on your own leany avocado trees. Or indeed, if you're growing other trees, this concept is transferable. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to Scott Grows an Avocado Tree for more avocado growing goodness. I'm also on Instagram at Scott Grows an Avocado Tree. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time.
Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree.